Hey, it's Dave from cheapwinefinder.com. Again, coming with another companion podcast for a review we did of a wine on the cheapwinefinder.com website. And this is just a $6.99 Chardonnay from ALDI. It's called the Sienna Glen Chardonnay 2018 vintage. And it's just a nice little Chardonnay, your typical inexpensive Chardonnay, though, because Aldi's is a contract wine. It's a store brand. They go to a company, and actually the company they went to is a winery out of Mendocino. You've seen their wines before. They know how to make wine, so that's a good thing. They make good wine, and they make good wine in the lower price range too, with upper, more expensive wines. And like when a company like Aldi goes to these people, they pay up front. They negotiate. I want this wine. I want it to do this and that. I want it to come in at this price. And when they get to their agreement, when the wine is produced and it's ready to be shipped, they pay down the price, and they take possession of it and goes in the warehouse, not to the stores. Where wineries, when they do their own wines, or do their own wines they send to the retail brands, those wines, they don't get back right away. They get back as the wine sells. The distributors and everybody across the country pays them, in stages. So it might take a full year or more for them to get their money back. So it's a good deal for them to sell these wines to the stores. They want to do it. It's cash, keeps the cash flow going. And, and Aldi's doesn't sell retail brands, so they're not competing with their own wine. So it's a good deal for them. And so, the $6.99 Chardonnay, if it were in a store, it would be more expensive because Aldi's is getting a cash price up front. There's savings there because they're not doing advertising. They're not doing marketing. There's a savings there since they don't need all the distribution costs. So they're just basically shipping and warehousing. You don't have a whole fleet of salespeople out in the street trying to get you to buy it. Aldi's does that all in house. They don't try too hard. They put it on a shelf and hope you buy it. So, you never know exactly how much of the savings they're passing on to the customer, but it could be, several dollars. I mean, depending on the situation. So this $6.99 wine might be, if it were in a store, closer to $10 somewhere, maybe $9 that way. So $6.99 isn't, you're getting a bargain. The deal is you don't know where it comes from. You don't know who made it. You don't know too much about it. They don't give you technical notes, but that's, you give it a try. It's inexpensive, and that's where it goes. And so, I didn't have too much to say about this wine. It's fruity. It's very fruit forward. It's not sweet. It's dry. It's got a lot of flavor. It's kind of one of those Chardonnays that kind of jump out of your glass. It's got a little bit of vanilla. It's got lemons and apples and pears and peaches. And, there's, some even like dried banana bits, and it's got that. I think it's on lees. On lees is when they leave the yeast in there with the wine as it ages, and you get this salty, nutty thing from that. So it's a nice example of a Chardonnay. I mean, not everybody likes every Chardonnay. Every Chardonnay seems to be a little bit different than the next, but for $6.99, it's a pretty decent little Chardonnay. And so I was saying, what can you say about an inexpensive Chardonnay nowadays from California? It's going to be a good wine, but what are you going to say about it? And I started thinking, I was at a wine tasting about a month ago. It was Italians came through, and the guy behind the desk was telling me this is their everyday wine. It was a $10, $12 wine. And he said, this is an everyday wine. And I went, well, actually, in Italy, if you're drinking wine with lunch, if you're drinking a bottle of wine with dinner, if you're having it every day, you're not paying $10 for a bottle of wine, are you? He goes, well, no. And I didn't want to argue with the guy or anything. I just went, oh, okay. Because that is something that's something you got to get in your head a little bit. That when people from Europe, France, Spain, Italy, and every other country that has a wine tradition, when they have a bottle of wine with their lunch, with their dinner, it's €2 or €3. I mean, they don't, for the most part, splurge on wine for those settings. I mean, there's some that do, but 95% of the people don't. They're all buying the same kind of local wines that are very good. And, these aren't places where they microwave their meals. They're not getting mac and cheese out of the box, just add some liquid. No, this is, kind of farm to market shopping, going out that day, getting some food, spending a few hours on it and putting effort into the meal. You're not just going to pour any old nonsense into your glass. You're getting a wine you like, and that goes with what your meal is. And it's very expensive. And I know in the United States, I mean, first of all, we don't really eat that way. Drinking at lunch is kind of frowned upon. But and the way we price our wines are a little bit different than they do in Europe. So it's not the same thing. But this $6.99 Chardonnay is kind of what you should be drinking with your meals if you're going to have meals. Yeah, you can go and spend a lot of money on it if you want to, but you don't need to. And that's the kind of mindset you got to get your head in. And once you figure out that inexpensive wines can be something that you would have with a meal that you spent time with and you're eating with family and friends, and that a $50 bottle of wine isn't necessary. I mean, the world does not do that. I mean, the wine world just drinks these inexpensive wine. Usually the region where it comes from, if you live near the ocean, you're going to have wines that do well with seafood. If you live near, someplace where they're going to have, it's a little colder, there might, and you're having stews and that kind of stuff, you're going to have wine that goes well with stews, just the local wine. And it doesn't cost a lot of money. So if you can start thinking that $7, $5 actually is the wines that you can have with food, then that kind of reorders your priorities when you go out to the store and buy wine. Now I'm not saying that there isn't great wines that are more expensive, and because there are, and I'm not saying that there's no reason to buy more expensive wines, because you buy them because you want to and you like them and they're fun to drink. But if you understand that you don't have to, that a inexpensive wine is basically the wine that the world drinks every day for lunch, for dinner, on meals they've spent a lot of time preparing with their family, that kind of changes your priorities. It's not what it costs and what it tastes like. So, don't think, I need to buy a $15 wine, because $15 wines aren't anything. They could be 1,000 different things. You want a wine that tastes good, that's going to match your meal. If you're going to do it that way, if you're just drinking it for pleasure, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can buy an expensive wine for pleasure. That's, I like to do that too, but just remember, the price of the wine does not dictate its quality or its taste, and it just doesn't anymore. And it's actually, that is getting to the point when I first started doing the website, 10, 11 years ago, anything under $10 was like, okay, I'm going in, cover me. I don't know if I'm going to get out of here. It's because half the time there was something wrong with the wine. It's like, oh man. And nowadays it's very, very inexpensive, and it's mostly not, it's even drinkable. It's not even just drinkable. It's kind of enjoyable. I mean, it's like, where does the line go where wine is no good anymore? And I know I've had wines that I didn't like, and I've had wines that have gone bad, and I've had wines that I don't think they had great quality control. And, because I think $2 truck, some people love it, and ones I get tend to have something wrong with them. So I stay away from that kind of thing. But because they make so much of it, then they don't really pick and choose what goes into the wines that much. But still, there's still good wines out there that don't cost money, that are enjoyable, that they're fun, and they make sense. And when you spend more, quite often you're just doing it to spend more. And that's not the smartest thing in the world. Buy wine because it tastes good. Buy wine because it's what it needs to be. If it's a special occasion, splurge. If friends you haven't seen in 10 years come over and you open up a great bottle of wine's fine. But if it's Tuesday and you're watching Netflix, a good, inexpensive bottle of wine is probably the thing. And that's it for me. We're going to start doing the holiday party wines coming up. This is probably going to be the last of just the inexpensive Chardonnays, supermarket ones. Everything's going to be bubblies and upscale, and wines that should be upscale but are inexpensive. That's coming up, so keep it cheap. And I will talk to you in a day or two. Adios, and over and out. Bye.